All right, get to read our iTunes review of the week. So, our nowadays it's called Apple Podcasts. So, we got Dante in Connecticut. Dante says Dan's podcast is absolutely on the mark. He is an authentic and sincere person who brings his love of life and God to this wonderful podcast. Also, even though the title deals with dad, I strongly encourage everyone to take a listen. You will not be disappointed by the wonderful stories and lessons. Dante, I appreciate you so much. I know that one's an alias because you sent me a text when you put this one in. I know where you're at and where you're at in life. So keep loving God. And I know you're going through a different time right now, but you'll get through this, man. I appreciate you. All right. So today I'm so fired up and excited. Got introduced to Vernon Fox by a great guy, Anthony Trucks. And so cool to be connected to Vernon. Not only did he play in the NFL, but he played for the Chargers, the Lions, the Redskins, the Broncos, played with one good friend of mine on two different teams, which is absolutely amazing. Got his jersey retired from his high school, Cimarron Memorial, and went to Fresno State, got his degree, two-time all-WAC conference defensive back. Just absolutely amazing, all the list of football awards and stuff that you've accomplished. Coached a high school football team, won a title, went on and associate minister at the City Refuge Church of God in Las Vegas, so the home of Steven Jackson. So just absolutely phenomenal. And not only that, you're in leadership coaching these days and just retired. I guess we'll call it that from being a football coach. So I want to welcome Vernon Fox to the podcast. Vernon, welcome. So excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan. I'm excited to be here. It's an honor and a privilege.
Excellent, excellent. Um, t- I'm just so intrigued by the NFL background that you've got, especially with the teams that you were on. You got to play for like I don't know if there's 10 phenomenal coaches. You got to play for three of them that are just off the charts: Shanahan and Gibbs and Marty Schottenheimer. God rest Marty's soul. He just passed away recently, and anyway, obviously want to talk about what you've done and everything, but floored by the coaches. And then with Schottenheimer's recent passing, or Coach Marty, thought you might want to talk a little bit about coaches and then also about Coach Marty too.
Sure. Yeah. No, I was tremendously blessed to play for some great leaders and coaches. Like you mentioned, some guys may get a chance to play for one in their career, but I had a chance to play for a number of influential coaches. Starting with Marty, who gave me my first opportunity with the formerly known as the San Diego Chargers team in 2002, and I was brought in as an undrafted rookie free agent, and he gave me my first shot. And I just recall the level of leadership and his effectiveness as a coach. One of the most knowledgeable coaches I've really ever been around. I don't think that there wasn't a position that he couldn't coach, and just his ability to motivate was kind of unlike any other coaches I'd been around. And so, I'm forever grateful for him giving me that opportunity. From there, I went on to the Detroit Lions, where I was coached by Steve Mariucci, who is the quintessential players coach, man. Every play,
Mooch.
yeah, every player that's ever played for Mooch, I guarantee, they love him. He was player friendly and just a good all around guy. And then I had a chance to play for the Hall of Fame Joe Gibbs, which is probably the highlight of my career. Playing for a strong man of God like Joe, and just his leadership ability and just his love for the players was something that emanated from him, and that you were able to experience through that playing for him. And then I ended my career playing for Mike Shanahan, and obviously he has a long history of success, and man, just an amazing career, and I really appreciate God for the opportunity to kind of follow behind such great leaders.
Wow. What did you take from a leadership standpoint from any of those coaches?
I think one of the things you mentioned that I went into coaching, which really wasn't on my radar, and maybe we'll end up talking about this a little bit. But I ended up coaching, 3 years after I had retired. took over as a head coach at a large private school here in Las Vegas. And one of the things I did was I tried to take qualities from each of those individuals. In my mind, the concept of leadership is it boils down to one word, which is influence. And I feel like the most effective coaches have the ability to do two things. One is to motivate, and one is to teach. And so each of those coaches kind of had their way of doing both of those things, or maybe they were really good at one. And so I tried to take qualities from each of them and really build the platform of who I could be as a coach and as a leader. And there was tons that I learned from each of them.
Mm. What about what about Marty? Tell us a little bit about Coach Marty. I've read a few things about him. I've followed him for years. I went to college close by Kansas City, um, but I know he had an impact on you.
Yeah.
So there's one lesson that I saw you shared the other day. If you don't talk about it, I'll ask a follow up to make for sure that we catch it. So
Yeah.
I'll let you just share a little bit, and then we'll get into a few things.
Sure. Marty was really vital to me growing as a player, as a professional. I mentioned he gave me my first opportunity there in San Diego, and the first thing I'll say about him is that he was the premier motivator. So I don't know if you've ever seen like his story on NFL Network, but like he is the one that could jerk tears out of you before a pregame, or at halftime. His speeches were just kind of second to none. When I say a motivator, like he literally could make you want to run through a brick wall. And the thing I loved about him was that he could teach you how to get through that wall as well. So it wasn't just like pumping you up for fanfare. Like he could really kind of motivate you and teach you at the same time. But some personal experiences I had with him. My rookie year, I was a fearful mess. I walked in, I was a six-string strong safety. I was the smallest guy, in the defensive backfield at safety, and playing behind guys like Rodney Harrison and Junior Seau, and it was crazy experience. And I remember just going to work every day and just saying I'm gonna just do everything that I can in my power to prove that I belong here, and just playing through the fear, to be honest. And I remember he came up to me one day on the field and he goes, man, you are a gem. He's like, you are one of the best finds that we could have gotten, as a free agent. He's like, I'm really not sure how you got through without getting drafted, but we're happy to have you. And that made me feel like I can't even explain the words, because I was kind of struggling with my confidence, and not getting drafted was something that really kind of impacted me, and was a huge blow, probably to my pride more than anything. And so that was kind of the first experience. And then once I finally made that final 53-man roster, I was backing up Rodney Harrison. And in our first game of the year, he went down with an injury. So I went in, I finished the game. We won the game. We're on the plane. We're headed back from Cincinnati to San Diego. And I walk by him and he's like, hey, come here. I need to talk to you for a moment. I'm scared to death, because I'm thinking like, oh no, maybe I'm getting sent home. I'm getting cut. I didn't know
Yes.
what to think in that moment. And he said, well, Rodney is injured and you're up. And I was just like, what do you mean? And he's like, we're gonna be going with you moving forward. You'll be starting. And I just couldn't believe it, to go from being undrafted and one of the last guys signed to that roster to going into my second week as a starter in the NFL was just unbelievable. I was on the plane looking out of the window, you know,
Undrafted to starter in the NFL.
just nothing
That
but
quick.
God. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I was close to quitting, to be honest. When I didn't get drafted, I was thinking, okay, well, I got my degree. I had a postgraduate scholarship, and I could go and pursue a master's. I really considered giving up football, and to think that in a matter of 4 months, how that story got flipped, around, and things were totally different. I was just grateful. And so Marty was just a big part of that journey. The next week when I was starting, I was sitting there and I'm shaking and jittering, and I'm running out on the field when I shouldn't be. And he grabbed me and he's just like, calm down. He's like, you're ready for this moment. And sure enough, I went out, performed, we won. I got an interception against my old buddy David Carr. It was an amazing day.
That's awesome. Did you play at Fresno with him?
I did. So yeah, I was there. A funny thing I tell a lot of people, everyone's more familiar with Derek Carr now, a lot of the younger guys.
Yeah.
And I tell them, I'm like, man, Derek was like a little kid running around when I was there with his bigger brother David. He was the man back then.
So these different coaches and things, and Marty saying what he did to you reminds me of like when I was growing up, there was the coaches and then uh, assistant coaches and different things, and then the dads. Like
Right.
we just had they had such an influence on me, such an impact on me. And there were certain coaches that had that way, like Marty did for you, that just gave you so much confidence and made you feel like you belonged and you were vital and the team needed you. And um, so I loved hearing that story about Marty and what he did for you. I was talking to a guy, Dre Bly, and I said, "Hey man, a defensive back, pretty dang good cornerback." And I said, "Hey man, what was it like playing for Coach Martz? Mad Mike, little bit crazy, a little bit eccentric, certainly had a big personality. And it seemed like he could choose some guys pretty good too, like just get on them. And Dre being a defensive back and Mike being an offensive guy, I expected to hear maybe a little bit different viewpoint than the offensive players. And instead, he jumped out. He goes, I love playing for Mike.
Yeah.
So what was it? All the passes and all the catches and the high flying, we scored a whole bunch of points and you could, do whatever you did on defense. And he goes, no. He goes, Mike said, if you see a play, make it. I believe in you. You can do it. And he goes, he did that for everybody, offense, defense, special teams. It didn't matter. He
Wow.
totally had your back. If you believe you can make the play, he goes, and he would always try to set you up in a position where you could do it. I'm like, he didn't even mess with the defense. He goes, no, he really didn't know too much about defense, but he did know talent and he inspired confidence. And like you said, because I felt like I could, and in this Dre's words, because I felt like I could run through a brick wall for that guy because he believed in me so much
Yeah.
that I didn't have a fear of making a mistake.
Right. I think it's important, listening to you and hearing you say that. Those were some of the things that, as a coach, I remembered as a player. I guess my approach to coaching was that everything I felt like I needed as a player, I tried to offer my players. Anything that I felt hindered me or became a stumbling block for me as a player, I tried to avoid those things and tried to teach my staff to always be considerate of putting the student athlete first. And so that really was just my approach. And like you said, so many young men, they just need to feel like someone believes in them and to feel like they can do it, because it's not something that they hear every single day. And then offering them balance where they understand, like, hey, I want to pump you up, but I want to challenge you at the same time. Because the other aspect of those great coaches that I didn't mention is that, yeah, they could get on you and they could hold you accountable as well. And I think that's important. It's the same thing, as with the father. I'm a father of two. And as much as I want to love my kids, as much as I want to nurture them and I want to cultivate and pump them up and, build their confidence, I also want to keep them humble. And so I have to find that delicate balance in where they know I'm their number one supporter, but they also know I'm not going to let them get by without being, excellent or performing to the best of their ability at whatever it is that they do.
And how old are they?
So my daughter is 13. She'll be 14 here in about a month. And my son is 11.
Okay. Okay. Man, mine are 8 and 7, both daughters.
Nice.
And I can see that 13, 14-year old coming.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's felt like she's been a teenager for a lot longer than she has been. And it just got intensified when she really became one. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Any any tips for those of us that haven't made it to there yet with daughters? Like,
Ooh,
talk to me.
I don't know if I'm qualified yet to give advice. It's still early for me. But one of the things I do with my daughter is I really try and help her understand her value. Like I just
Yes.
want her to know how valuable she is, and even when it comes to just expressing the things of God and God's plans for her life and who she is and how He designed her and created her. I try to highlight all of her gifts and all of her talents, and to make sure that she knows if she doesn't hear from anybody else, I want her to hear from dad. We spend a lot of time just talking, and that one-on-one of me just building her up and making sure that, when she goes out in the world, if no one else, helps her understand how valuable she is, she can know that she got it, at home.
Yes, absolutely. I want her to have her value in herself and know that God loves her no matter what. Dad does too.
Amen.
But no matter what happens in life, you're good.
Yes, sir.
Like you're good.
Yes,
So I see too many girls that have had different things, and people, they get a different type of attention than we get.
right, 100%.
So yeah, I'm like, down the road, those girls might be mean to you or, what have you, but you just be you. Like
Right.
go through life being you and knowing that those type things don't affect you unless you let them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah,
Messages that we're sharing, and she's getting kind of to that mean girl stage, so where she's experiencing the girls that give her the pushback for holding her ground or standing in integrity or being different, and I'm just getting her to understand that that's nothing wrong with that. Be yourself at all times, never back or shrink away from who you are and how God created you to please people, because people are going to come and go, but those that really matter most, and most certainly living a life that pleases God is primary.
yeah, yeah, I like that. People come and go because
Sir.
it's true,
We both know it.
Yeah, yeah. Your grade school friends, a couple of them might stick around. A couple of your high school friends might stick around. A couple of your maybe at
Right.
best. But down
Absolutely.
the road, it's going to be your family and whoever you marry.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So, um, any uh, any other crazy NFL stories or anything that stands out that we should dive into? I know I was kind of looking at the teams you were on, and I love that you were with Dre, and
Mhm.
I was hoping to find a Torrey Holt, scoring a bunch of touchdowns or something, but instead I found Isaac Bruce scoring 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, no, you know what? I had one of the more exciting games I've ever played in, and personal achievement games was against St. Louis.
Okay.
I was with the Redskins, so I guess it may have been my second or third start. I was with the Redskins, and we were playing against St. Louis in St. Louis, and I had one of those games that to this day just seems unreal. And I'm so happy that I actually have the footage. So I requested the game film after the game, and they gave it to me. It might even be like on a DVD or something. I have no idea, but
Right.
I remember it was a crazy game. We ended up losing in overtime. So Steven
Okay.
Jackson pulled off a run, and the game was won. But in this game, so I started at safety, and I had 11 tackles on defense. I had a pass deflection. I had a blocked punt on special
Oh,
teams, and I was on the kickoff team. Now, this was the first time that I pretty much played the entire game. I never came off the field, because ordinarily, if you were playing a greater role on offense or defense, they kind of dialed you back on special teams. But for whatever
right.
reason, this game, I never came off the field, and I was dog tired. So I remember that. But I ran down, and on every kickoff, so there were 7 of them, I had 7 solo tackles on kickoff. I made every tackle, and I think 4 of them were inside the 20. It was
Wow.
ridiculous. And so I remember after the game, obviously we lost the game. I'm just exhausted and spent. And I remember Joe Gibbs saying, if we won this game 100%, you would have been the NFC player of the week. He's just like, there's no way you wouldn't have been, the defensive player of the week. And so I never got to see an accolade like that, but it would have been pretty awesome. But yeah, they were a tough team to beat.
And you could tackle some people. You could put the hammer down on some people.
I did my best. I mean, I was a little guy, so I had to be aggressive and fast. I tell my son that because he's like, "Dad, am I gonna get taller?" I'm like, "I hope." I mean, mom's pretty tall. She's about 5'8", and I'm probably scratching 5'10". I'm like, but hopefully you be taller than dad at least.
So you mentioned Steven Jackson a second ago. So playing the safety position, what was that like seeing him coming at you?
You know what? I played against a ton of good running backs, and I know Steven personally. We both grew up in Vegas. Played
Okay.
played against him in college when he was at Oregon State.
Yep.
At one point, we had the same agent, and so it was cool to get a chance to play against him in the league. But he was a monster. I mean, big back like that, you know that you can't hit him up high. Um, and not only that, he was elusive and fast. So you had to try to get to him quick and wrap up. That was the one thing you had to know, because if not, I mean, he could run all over you.
Yeah, he was confident and he picked that number 39. He said, I said, "Why'd you do that?" He says, "Nobody else has got it. I want to make a name for myself. When people think 39, I want them to think of me."
Nice.
So that was pretty cool. It was good getting to hang out with him. And then did you play with Mike Fury too?
I I did. So Mike actually, if I'm not mistaken, so this was in Detroit.
Yeah, yeah.
Mike, yeah. And I remember at one point, he was a receiver, and they actually put him
Yes.
on defense as well.
Yes.
Came over and played some safety with
He
us.
played cornerback, he played safety, and he played wide receiver in the NFL.
He did it all.
You might not believe this one, but he led the league in receptions.
Really?
Yes.
What year was that?
Maybe 2006, 2007.
Yeah, I know that he was used a lot like a Wes Welker, and
Yes.
those guys, Edelman. Like he was really valuable. A guy that can get
Five
loose.
foot nine,
Just works hard though, man.
175 or so.
Guys like that you love, man, because
He may
they.
have been 200. He was a pretty thick guy, but I was like, you came into the league as a backup cornerback. And now you led the league in receptions as a wide receiver, and you like baseball better than football. Like, just a crazy story.
Absolutely.
So that's Mike Martz using people where they were talented is how Mike Fury got to be leading the league in receptions.
That's awesome. Another sign of a good coach is figuring out how to utilize guys. I was excited. This past week, rookie for Tampa Bay Buccaneers, got a chance to win a Super Bowl in his rookie year as a kid that played for us at the high school that I coached at.
No way.
He was a part of our state championship team in 2013, and the thing that I love about it is myself and another my offensive coordinator at the time. The minute we see this guy, the offensive coordinator is like, man, he's not a tight end. He's 6'6", he's athletic. I think back then he's just under 300, but just the athletic kid. He goes, this kid is a left tackle. He's like, I'm telling you. And I said, well, we'll have some fun trying to convince him of that, because he's a basketball player and a tight end. And sure enough, he took to the position, ended up being lineman of the year, both on offense and defense, his junior and senior year. Went to Boise State, and now in his first year wins a Super Bowl. So it's pretty cool when you can. I think that's a sign of a good coach, when you can see where a guy is valuable and help him realize his potential.
Yeah, yeah, that is amazing. And you might tip him off that he might not be going back to the Super Bowl every year.
I won't spoil it for him.
I was talking to Torrey Holt, and Torrey's like, "Man, I win the Super Bowl my first year." And I just thought we had such a good team, we just keep going back.
Right. Man, talking to a guy that made it to the playoff one time in 8 years. So
Yeah,
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 rare. It's a rare experience.
yeah, absolutely. So transitioning from NFL to high school coaching, and now with your leadership, what are some, like, when you think about family, when you think about leadership, what are some things that you think about that you want to impress upon your family? Maybe some core values and things that you build around.
There are a few core values that I think are transferable, whether it's as a parent, it's as a coach, just as a leader in general. And one of those things that I really stress upon anyone that spends a significant amount of time around me, you'll hear me talk about intentionality. I feel like you have to be intentional in order to achieve any level of success, any goals that you set for yourself, any mission that you subscribe to. There has to be a process of intentionality. A lot of people just hope, wish, pray, and that's great. I mean, even having faith. The Bible tells us that faith without works is dead. So
Hmm.
we can hope, wish, pray, trust God that things will happen and work out the way that we want them to. But there's a requirement on our part, and that means waking up every single day, and being intentional about running in the direction of the goal that it is that you're seeking to accomplish. I like to say it like this: goals are kind of like the first downs on the way to the touchdowns of your dreams. And when you set these standards or these goals for yourself, for your family, for your organization, for your business, there are tangible plans and goals and action steps that you have to take in order to do it. And so it was just a reminder every day as a coach. I talk about being intentional. To my children, I tell them you have to be intentional. When I have the chance to consult organizations or teams or businesses, I'm saying the same thing. You have to be intentional. Once you set that mission, that vision for your organization or your family, now you have to set a plan in place in order to get to where it is that you're trying to go.
So I love intentionality, and that's something that people have goals, concepts, things that they want to do. Like, okay, what's your plan, and how do you account? Well, I'm just going to get it done. Like, well, I think there should be some steps in the way, and there should be some, things you do every day, some habits you build, and things like that. So I'm like, okay, I like what we're working with. Now let's build something into it. And even on like off days. So I talked to a lot of guys and I'm like, what's your Saturday, Sunday look like? Or what's your off days look like? Well, I don't plan anything for those days.
Yeah.
Okay. So with nothing planned on those days, what do you feel like you accomplish on those days? Oh man, it's family all day, every day. Okay. And what do you get out of that? Whatever happens. I'm like, no, I would think you probably want to change something,
Yeah.
whatever that might be. And they always, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you want to work out on those days? I do. Cool. When? Well, I end up never doing it because the things that happen and I end up missing. Oh, okay. You want to talk to your kids about whatever? What about Sunday? You know what? We miss church a lot. I'm like, these seem like important things. They sound like important things. Like,
Right.
might you start putting them on? I probably should put a couple of chunks in there of must do's and certain times. And okay, what about talking with your wife? I should. I'm like, okay. And eventually they come around like, all that stuff that I do for business, I should apply that at home too. I should win at work and win at home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's transferable. And it applies in every aspect. Even when you said that, I was just kind of listening to you and I was thinking to myself, because people may not think that a day of rest or a day spent with your family, like, what's the value in that? That can be a part of your action steps or your plan. That it just it has to be intentional as well. So it can't just be haphazard or random. It has to be a part of the plan, because what ends up happening is then that can't be disrupted when you're intentional about it. So you don't allow a phone call or an email to take you off task. That day that you've decided to spend with your family, you're intentional about that. So that means that maybe I'm not spending this time on social media or on my phone, or this time that I am with my family, I am present. Because that's a big thing that I've had to learn, is that there's a big difference in being, there and being present. Because I can be there and my kids can be talking to me, and I have no idea what they're talking about. And when they ask me a question, I have to stop what I'm doing and say, okay, say that again. And it's a telltale sign that I'm not dialed in. I'm not present. I'm just there. My body's there, but I'm not present in the moment. And so I really try to practice being present and laying aside distractions so that I can be available to them, because this world is too busy. There's so much going on. We're so distracted. And if we don't intentionally, set aside moments and space for, our family and the things that matter most, then, we'll continue to just, you know, not really be there in those moments that are necessary to cultivate those relationships and to make sure that, things are going in the direction that they should.
Have you got an example of a time, maybe something you always do, or a time that you set aside for something special to be intentional with your family?
You know, uh, there's a few things. Now, when it comes to my family, so for instance, I bought a book for my daughter. I bought her a book, and it's about saving yourself for marriage. And
Mm-hmm.
along with this book, when I presented this book to her, I also gave her a promise ring from dad. And
Mm-hmm.
I explained to her the value of that ring. I explained to her why I was giving it to her, and I explained to her what that book represented. And so, what we try to do is we set aside time where we sit together, just her and I, and I'll literally read out loud the chapter to her. So I'll read when I come across a concept or a word that I think maybe she doesn't know what it is and she probably wouldn't ask. I'll stop and I'll say, you know what that means? And she'll tell me yes. And if she does, I'll let her explain. And if she doesn't, then I'll do my best to explain. And if I don't know, I'll look it up so both of us can know. And so we do that. We pray together and we have a discussion. And that's just time for me and her, and I love being the one to present that to her and not allowing the world to give their concept of what sex and purity and what God's word has to say concerning it. So that's one thing in particular that at least with my daughter that I try to do, and build some consistency, intentionality around it.
So you brought it up. So I'll dive in a little bit there. We've got dad, obviously male, daughter, obviously female. And a lot of guys I talk to say, oh no, that one's not for me. That's not my conversation. How'd you come around to embracing that one?
I obviously there's going to be a connection between her and mom that's going to be different than dad.
Yeah.
There's going to be some things discussed that she won't get from dad. But I'll tell you where I really felt prompted to kind of move in that direction. I've been watching so many things on TV, and I've been seeing so many just negative and painful things that we see happen in our country, and these cases of molestation, and um, with the trafficking and all of these different things. And as you see these things unfold in our country, you'll hear the testimonies of these victims. And it will be 2, 3, 4, 10 years that they've gone through, these types of things. And this is the first time that they're ever coming forth and speaking on it. And I've always thought to myself, like, man, why didn't they say something? Why didn't they tell someone? And you never know everyone's dynamic. You don't know the circumstance that they're in. You don't know the threats that they're facing. You don't know if they even have someone in their life that they trust enough to go and have those conversations. And that prompted me to make sure that my daughter knew that I was a safe space for her, that there was nothing that she could not talk to me about, that I wasn't going to judge her. I wasn't going to make her feel a certain way. And I wanted her to feel comfortable having these types of conversations with me even at a young age, so that you know if God forbid some of these things were ever exposed to her, or she felt uncomfortable, or people made her feel a certain way, I wanted her to be able to come and talk to me and say, hey dad, this is taking place, we've talked about this before, these are things that you've told me, and I don't like the way this makes me feel, or what do you think about this, or from a male's perspective, should I be concerned about this? So I wanted to open the door for those conversations, and it took a lot of prayer and bravery, because it's kind of uncomfortable to be there and talk about some of the things in that book. But you just gotta jump in, and I want my baby girl to know that I'm a safe space, and that there's nothing that she has to shield from communication when it comes to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the guys I was talking to a long time ago, he told me, he says, it's not one conversation. It's a million little bitty conversations that lead you into it. So you got to start when they're young and
Right.
just keep going and going and going. And it's more natural. And, that safe space, like you said, I got a group of guys that I mastermind with. And that was a question I threw to them. How do you provide a safe space for your family? And part of it was having conversations like that, being open to it. And yeah, I definitely do think that us guys, us dads have a role in our daughter's life to talk about those things.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's how it started for me. There were very, minuscule lead-ins that maybe they didn't see, the build up, but I'd ask small questions. If it was just, and I always do it one on one. I don't make them uncomfortable together. It's one on one conversations, and I ask small questions. Hey, have you ever heard of this? Or, you know, are kids your age, talking about this kind of stuff? I just do things like that, and it kind of makes them feel comfortable. Like, oh, I can talk about this, or I can ask him a question. So what I try to do.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. What about you've got some, like you told me earlier, cover guide lead. Like I always think from a perspective of love God, love your neighbor, love God above all else, and love your neighbor as yourself, which also means you need to love yourself and figure that part out too. You can't love somebody else if you don't love yourself. But then I break that down into protect, provide, and humbly lead your family.
Yeah.
And then I also include fun just for me because I can get pretty focused and everything else. So I always got to make sure I'm incorporating fun into wherever I'm at in life. Otherwise, I might get super focused on accomplishment as opposed to enjoying it also.
I'm so
But you talk, what's that?
I can be guilty of that as well.
And earlier you talked before we started about cover guide and our cover lead and guide. You want to get into that a little bit? I love that coming from a defensive back.
Yeah, yeah, and that's funny because it's so relatable. When it comes to that, as a defensive back, that's kind of one of the things. As a safety in particular, you're kind of one of the quarterbacks of the defense. So you're kind of guiding things. You're the lead on communication on the back end, and then also, like, obviously you're covering. They like to call the free safety the angel of the defense. The deep
Yeah.
deeper than the deepest. I mean, you're the last line of defense. And so I feel like that as a father as well, that my role is to cover my family at all times, to protect them. And that's in every sense, from a physical standpoint, from a spiritual perspective, to lead out and be the example. I want my kids to see me praying. They know, the spaces in the home where I spend time with God. And so if they pop in and they look and they see me, they know, like, this is quiet time for dad. And they don't say anything, but I want them to see those examples because I want them to see my discipline in those areas. And so that's a part of my leading, and then just guiding them, in the things of God, and teaching them to be a young man and a young woman of character, integrity, accountability, excellence. I'll give you an example. My
Yeah,
son,
please do.
he's big into video games. So he
Okay.
video games, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. I don't know, because he's a little sports guy too. So he loves football. He loves athletics, and all of a sudden he got this affinity for video games, and it just came out of nowhere. And so he would ask me about certain games, and there's certain games I just wouldn't let him play. And in the beginning, he didn't really ask questions. He's a good kid, and I appreciate the fact that my kids, even when we're not around, they'll try to honor the things that we've asked them to do or not to do. And so I really appreciate that about them. When we gave them cell phones, like, we have rules. They had to sign a contract, and so we talk about those things and revisit those things. And so he came to me one day and he said, well, Dad, there's this particular game that you won't let me play. He goes, all of my friends play it. He's like, and it's kind of frustrating that when they go play that game, then I just have to kind of sign off and go do something else. He's like, and I don't really understand. He goes, does it make me a bad person if I want to play that game, or does it make them bad people to play that game? How come they get to and I don't? And I said, well, son, my responsibility, and I'm accountable to God first, is to cover you in every way. And
Hmm.
part of that is covering you spiritually. And so in many cases there are some things that you may not see that I'm aware of, in the spirit realm, that I want to protect your spirit from. I don't want you to allow you to be exposed to certain things that I know can be harmful to you spiritually. And so while it seems like it's not a big deal, and it's just a video game, I know that desensitization can lead to you being vulnerable spiritually, and I don't want to allow that. So therefore, as your parent, that's the decision I'm making for you. I can't make that decision for, your friends or your cousins or anyone else. They have parents, and that's their responsibility. But from my perspective, I I am responsible for making sure that you're covered. And I can't do that in every way. But when I do have an opportunity, I want to take advantage of that, because as a father, that's what you do. And so I'm teaching him at the same time, I'm covering him, and I'm guiding him so that he knows when he's a father, that's what he's supposed to do. And God is just faithful, man. Like, they read little devotions, and we have them come and explain to us what they gathered out of the devotion. And sure enough, about a week after that conversation, he comes to me and he goes, "Dad, I know what you were talking about." And I'm like, "Huh?" And he pulls open the devotion, and literally it's talking about violence in video games and these things, and how it can, poison your spirit, and open you up for all. And I was just like, "Man, God, you're awesome." Because it was solidified. It was something that God put a stamp on. Me trying to stay, because it's hard to tell them no. You want to just let them play, like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, and
It's
it's
easier that way.
yeah, absolutely. So I think that's my concept of kind of covering, guiding, and leading.
It makes me think back to when I was a kid, and as I got older and stepping through things, and I'd do everything I could to get into whatever it was that was popular at the time for the world, but was something I shouldn't have been messing with,
Yeah, yeah.
especially music back in that day.
Oh,
Some of the music way back when, and some of the music now is a little crazy too.
yeah.
Seems like the craziness has come back around full circle.
Absolutely. It's probably worse in some cases now. As a coach, I was be in the locker room, so I was kind of exposed to everything. I'm like, what is this stuff you guys listen to?
At
And
a
I know
private school.
crazy. Yeah, I drove them crazy because I just didn't let them play anything, and I controlled the playlist at practice. They're like, "Coach, please." I'm like, "Nah."
I've got a buddy down in Louisiana, and he's like, "No, you guys can have parties at our house, but of course, there's no drugs, no alcohol, and you got to give me the playlist before the party."
Yeah.
I'm like, "No way, that's awesome!" So it's cool you do that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The funny thing about it is their concept of clean is totally different than the real concept of what clean music is. It's a lot of suggestive things that are maybe blanked out. I'm like, nah, guys, like I just can't allow that. And so they got used to it. I'm sure it drove them crazy, but that's my job. That's a part of our responsibility as leaders.
Yep. And now you're doing some leadership coaching. Decided to retire from high school coaching, which had to be tough, and transition over to uh, coaching. I assume men, women, anybody who's out there that's looking to do big things.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things, kind of the way things worked out for me, is when I retired in 2010, I kind of went directly into public speaking, and so I
Okay.
had been doing it all along. But as an ordained and licensed minister, naturally I was speaking on a regular basis and ministering. But then I kind of went into the motivational realm, where I was doing some motivational and inspirational speaking, that transitioned into leadership development and leadership coaching. And once I started coaching, I was kind of just doing it in the off season. So I travel and I do some things. And ironic enough, coaching opened up some doors for me for speaking. So I was actually like then becoming like a consultant for coaches and different people. And when God kind of gave me the red light on my coaching career, and told me that that was over, the next natural thing for me to go into was just the coaching, the speaking. I became certified as a life coach, and as a minister, naturally, it's just something that you do on a regular basis. And then more recently, during the pandemic, I started developing a true platform. So right now, I'm in the process of rebranding, and what I'll be starting is it's called Culture Coach. And so I'm huge on culture. A lot of the things that I teach is about culture transformation, about leadership development, about program and processes and foundational development of your organization or team. And so that's kind of really what I'm going to start focusing on. I think kind of the the basis will focus on coaches first of athletic programs. I have
Hmm.
great opportunities to kind of do some leadership development and culture transformation within teams and organizations. And so that's really what I'm digging into right now. And God has me kind of just really fine tuning that and taking the experience of those 7 years and the things that God taught me through that process, the successes, the failures, and just building a platform, an online course, group coaching. So I'm excited about it.
Wow. So culture coach, and then that gets all intimidating with the websites and the marketing and the
Oh yeah. Yeah, that part of it is boy, I tell you, I'm not good at self promotion, to be honest. I've always felt uncomfortable with that. It's just I've been one of those people where I just kind of show up, do my job, and that's it. So it's really hard when you step into the space of virtual marketing and promotion and social media. And when I do social media, it's really just to help people. Like I'll jump on and I'll make a video, and it specifically, like, God gives me something and I'm like, I just want to share this with, if it's just one person, I just want to do that. But having to try to build a following, and you're promoting constantly and you're selling, and that part of it is difficult for me. I realize that's a part of being an entrepreneur, but it does not come easy. So I pour all of my attention and focus into the content. I'm like, okay, God, I just want to provide something that's valuable and helps people. And however you help me to make a living from that, then so be it. But ultimately, it's about helping people at the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer in just get good at what you do, get good at your craft, and then good things will happen. And I always encourage others, hey, if you like what you saw or did, or how I helped you or what have you, love for you to promote in some way. Like with this podcast. Hey, love for you to do an Apple podcast review, rate and type something. Like the typing part's the big deal.
Right,
And
right.
in public speaking or coaching or what have you, I'd love an introduction. If you see somebody that might benefit from a conversation with me and maybe something else, just love an introduction type thing,
Yeah,
and using their story to promote you. So let others' lips promote you, not your own. I think
absolutely.
that's in the Bible as well.
It is. It is. I'm a big fan of Luke 14:11. It says, "Let those who exalt themselves be humbled, and those who humble themselves be exalted."
There
So
you go. You know it.
I do my best to work at staying humble. I don't want God to have to humble me.
That's right. Absolutely. I found every time that I got prideful or started hanging around others who are prideful, I became prideful.
Yeah.
And man, there was a fall coming.
Yes, sir. Gotta
That's,
come before the fall.
yeah, of the seven deadly sins, that's the one I look out for,
Yes, sir.
because it
It's
usually comes before all the other six.
Yeah, and it's sneaky. You can't see it. It's one of those things that oftentimes you don't recognize in yourself. Others can detect it better than you can. But when God exposes it, it's best to deal with it right away because it has the ability to take over.
Yeah. So you mentioned accountability earlier, and I give people in my life permission. I'm like, hey, if you see something, please come talk to me.
Right.
If I'm stepping a little bit off, correct me right away. I'd rather, take one step to the left and get back on the path than be 10 steps off and lost.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's vital to have those people who have permission to check you, so to say, because if not, man, when you operate on an island alone, it's a dangerous space.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So with the thought of families and dads and Christian leaders, have you got any thoughts about dads as the spiritual leaders of their home, and maybe an example of one way where you've stepped up to do that?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer. Obviously, as a minister, one of the things that I get the opportunity to do is officiate weddings, and so
Oh, this is good.
I have a firm requirement when I officiate a wedding. Like I don't just do it just to do it. Like
Yeah.
I need to have a minimum of a couple of sessions, premarital sessions with you, and that's part of the mandate that I place on a husband to be. Is like, hey, you have to understand that this is what God requires of us. You are to be the head of your home, And that's not just, to bring home the bacon, but, in every way, you are to set the example, you are to set the pace, you are to develop the standard. And while I recognize that not everyone is going to have the, spiritual acuity to perform that, in a mature way, um, that's where it's gonna come from first. If you can see that example in your home, man, that's gonna help you so much more than if you have to go out and experience the ails of life and then, kind of be exposed to it later just by happenstance, or, God's divine orchestration after all of the pain and the struggle. We're gonna experience that anyway. My kids are not gonna live a perfect life. They're gonna go out, they're gonna make mistakes, they're gonna be human. But what my goal is that they will have seen what a healthy marriage looks like. They will have seen what a dad who provides, a dad who covers, guides, and leads. And I think that really helped me because I saw that at home. My dad is, since I've been a kid, he's been my hero. Growing up, people say, all these people were their heroes, Michael Jordan, and
Yeah.
every people ask me, I can remember back being 6, 7 years old, and I remember people would be like, "Man, who's your hero? Who do you look up to?" And it's always been my dad.
Talk
Like,
about your dad for a minute.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm named after him, so that's one of the coolest things. And I try my best to be like him. I saw the example of a selfless father, of a selfless husband. To this day, I mean, he lives to please his grandkids, or his children. Like, he just covers us. He takes care of us. He treats my wife like it's his natural daughter. He's just always been that example. So I had a great example to look up to, and so that was the example that was set for me. And so that's what I want to set for my children, and my son in particular. Like, son, this is what, a husband looks like. I took on the same um, mindset as a coach, because to me, coaching was more than just teaching X's and O's. Like, I felt like we needed to be mentors, we needed to be father figures, we needed to be godly examples. And everything that we were asking those young men to be, we needed to first be the example of that in front of them. So I did things on purpose. If my wife came around, I would stop what I was doing, go and acknowledge her in front of the team, kiss her in public,
Yep.
kinds of affection. If my kids came around, I wasn't afraid to stop and hug them or tell them I loved them out loud. I told the boys the same thing. They knew that Coach Fox loved them because I told them every single day. When I prayed with them, I said, I love you guys. I wanted you to know that. And so, it's just I think it's important to set that example. I had that example set for me, so I try to exemplify the same.
Now with work from home and all that type stuff, my kids come in while I'm on Zoom calls and stuff, and I'm like, come on, say hi to my friend, say hi to my clients, my people, and everything else. And they leave and step out of the room. Whoever's on, like, oh, that's so great that you allow your kids to, whatever. I'm like, well, they're respectful and they know I'm doing some things, but like, I just love sharing life with them and just being involved with them. And, you know, anyway, this whole COVID thing has actually been great. I've loved it.
I agree. There's so many lessons. Obviously, there's so much.
There's some things, but from the family perspective, I've loved it. Let me clarify
It
that to a degree.
really helped my family in particular, just because we were kind of in a rat race of life. We live busy lives. My wife and I are heavily involved in ministry and just, personal career endeavors, and, with the kids, and we were just constantly just running, 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 running. And when we actually slowed down, we realized, like, man, there are areas of this house that we've never spent time in. We weren't sitting down eating at the table together.
Wow.
We weren't cooking regularly. Like, it was just so many things that we were able to gain from that time. I bought a little box for Christmas, and it's a phone jail. So
Yeah.
when we would sit together, we'd all stick our phone in the phone jail so no one could get their phones, and we had to talk and spend time together. Like, it's just stuff we didn't do. So yeah, I could say that there was a lot that we gained in that
With you
process.
a little bit ahead of me with how old your kids are. I'm
Okay.
like, what do you mean you weren't at the dinner table? Well, because they had stuff going on,
Oh yeah.
sports and activities. And I'm like, that's what I hear about from all my other friends. Like, just you wait, just you wait.
Yeah, I'm an Uber driver, man. Like, I'm at their beck and call all the time. So, but I enjoy it. I enjoy it. And that was part
Such a
of
good
I
that's such
walk.
a good thing too to be in the car one on one with them because
Oh
man,
yeah.
people will talk in a car.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. You have to.
Yeah, something about being shoulder to shoulder with a guy or person, woman, and you're looking this way, but your shoulders are, and it just gives you a little bit different way of communicating and kind of permission.
Right. It's probably easier for a guy like me too, because despite the fact that I'm a public speaker, I'm a preacher, all of this stuff, I'm super duper introverted. Like in these moments, I can talk and I feel comfortable. I actually feel more comfortable in a room, like in front of a bunch of people, than I do like one on one. Like I start sweating if I'm in a car with someone, or if I'm in an elevator or on a plane and someone's talking to me that I don't know. Like it's weird. And my wife is totally opposite. Like she can talk to anyone. She loves talking. Like I'll put on headphones to like pretend like I'm doing something else so I don't have to talk. It's weird.
How funny, how funny. I've heard other athletes also kind of tell me the same thing. They used to do those beats by Dre's, the big ones. That way they could be oblivious to the world.
Nothing playing on them.
So we always like to finish off the podcast with a challenge. If I was to ask you if you had something to challenge dads with,
Mm.
what would you think to throw out as a weekly challenge for them?
I would say to establish a plan of intentionality. So, and I'm kind of getting this from you in the moment, because one of the things that you said that I really liked was when you were talking about, individuals that maybe you've asked before, like, hey, what do you do on the weekend, or what do you do here? And I think all of us kind of have those dead moments where, we don't really spend enough time being intentional about how we spend our time. I felt really convicted, I'll be honest, recently about how I spend my time. I really just like, as I prayed and I was asking God, like, how can I be more productive? And, in some areas, like I started looking at my time and I'm just like, man, I waste a lot of time. Like there's a lot of time that I could be being productive and I don't. And so I started planning things out. I started writing things out. So that would be my challenge. So not just, with your work schedule, or, making sure you go to the gym every day. I'm saying like that family time. Like how can you be intentional? What one or two things can you do every week? Maybe setting aside 20 minutes if you got two kids, if you got one kid, if you got five kids, 20 minutes with each of them where they feel like they're getting personal attention from you, as a parent or as a dad. I just think it can go a long ways. I've developed a new level of closeness with both of my kids because of that personal time. Not just time where we're all together and we're playing pool or riding bikes, but no, just me and you, buddy, or me and you, sweetheart. Like that time has been valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of a short story. Something happened on a Sunday and it involved a few people I knew, and it was a little bit of chaos. And I knew there was a guy that had the answer, and it was a work related type of thing. So I sent him a text and he responds back. And the reply was, hey, if this has to do with work, would it be okay if this waited until tomorrow? Or if you want to catch up about, family or something like that, I can, call you in about 15 minutes.
Nice.
I said, well, this is about work. I can catch you tomorrow.
Yeah. No, I'm doing some personal development stuff, and I'm learning how to set boundaries, and I'm also learning how to value me, because it's something I don't do. Like I just give away my time, give away my energy, give away my focus. And so in doing that, one of the things that I've learned is to do things like what you say. And it's amazing the response you get from people. People honor that when they see someone that's like that sets boundaries and says, well, I won't be on my phone after 3. So if you can't get to me before then, the rest of the night I'll be with my wife, or we're going out to dinner and I want her to have my full attention. People really respect that, and I didn't know because I just wasn't doing it. I was just, trying to be available to her and them, and, having my attention divided. And I'm just learning, like, in setting those boundaries, like, it's an amazing feeling. Like Mondays, I don't do anything. Like, not for anyone else. It's just, hey, I'm gonna be around the house with my wife. She doesn't work or do anything on Mondays. And so, hey, we're gonna do a little cleaning up, whatever she wants to do. We may have breakfast, but I'm not gonna do any emails, no work, none of that. I've just decided that, since this year started, and it's been phenomenal.
We got a pastor friend of mine here in town, and he's like, "Don't mess with me on Mondays." Not being mean, but like, hey, I'm trying to recuperate, and this is my one day where I try to shield because I got to work on Sundays
Right.
and running a church and running the services and stuff. I was like, oh, that's cool. Everyone, so he'll call me on Monday. Like, hey man, he's no, it's okay. This one's within my rules. I'm reaching out about whatever. So having those boundaries and guidelines and stuff, and something for you, I learned this a while ago. There's a book called it's by Adam Grant,
Okay.
and I'm losing the name of it, but it's about givers, takers, matchers, and givers.
Hmm.
Givers are at the top and the bottom of the success ladder. The givers at the top have goals.
Okay.
The givers at the bottom that are just natural give, 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 they don't have any goals attached to where they're going. The ones at the top always have goals attached to where they're going. And that's where some of those boundaries and just different things start coming in. And it's
Yeah.
like a filter.
Mm.
So when you're in the focus given mode, something comes in and you think, does that line up with my goals? I
Right.
still want to help.
Right.
What's a way where I can give help, but maybe not an hour?
Right.
Because I want to go over here towards my goal.
Yeah.
Or yeah, that fits in, but I got another. But anyway, givers, takers, matchers. Most people are matchers, but a lot of people are givers, and givers are the most successful, but they got to have goals attached to the given side.
I love that, and that's a book that I really want to read. It's crazy that even just hearing you explain that, it's like a concept that God has been revealing to me without me ever like being exposed to it. But as you were saying it, I'm like, oh, it makes sense, because this is the space that I've fallen into, and it feels odd, but it feels liberating to set those boundaries. Like, I've said no in the last 30 days more than I ever have. And I used to feel guilty about saying no, because I just have a heart to help. Like, I always want to help. And I started thinking to myself, literally, I felt like just because I have the ability to assist in something doesn't mean that that's what God is calling me to do. And forever, I just thought, like, oh, well, if I can make this better, then I need to just make this better. I need to help in some kind of way. And it was making me deficient. It was taken away from my family. It was taken away from my own personal aspirations and goals. And I kept getting sidetracked because I was just trying to be everybody's savior and never say no. Like, just do whatever I could do to assist. And I'm just like, what you just said makes sense. It's like, hey, if this takes me away from the direction I'm going, like, I'll answer your question. I'll do what I can when I can, but I'm not going to meet your deadline to save you in this moment, because it's going to set me back.
Just like my buddy. Hey, it's Sunday. I spend time with my family and blah, blah, blah. And I'll do family and friend stuff on Sunday, but I won't work unless I absolutely have to. And I'm like, okay. I totally respect you. And I'm using that next time I get a Sunday request too.
Lovely, lovely.
Oh, well, I appreciate you so much. We'll share your links and stuff in the show notes for everybody, and get on that challenge, everybody, this week. Look for an area in your life where you should be more intentional and put some intentionality behind it, so you can make some progress. And whether that be connecting with your kids, connecting with your wife, or just unlocking something inside of yourself and getting past some limiting belief that you have, and living that better life, that spiritual leader of your home. And guys, it gets better and better and better when you're hanging around people that are better and better and better. So it's all about who you hang with, folks.
Absolutely. Iron sharpens iron.
That's right. Absolutely. It sure does. Thank you so much, Vernon. Look forward to catching up again here soon.
Thank you, Dan, for having me.
Absolutely.